Morning, everybody. This video, I'll be back to a knife video, might stir a little controversy because I think people are kind of polarized on the issue of clones. Maybe I should have titled this The Attack of the Clones. But I'm going to go through several quick knife reviews in the bigger context of clone knives. Now, first, to be very clear, we're not talking about counterfeits, okay? Counterfeit knives are different than clones. Counterfeit would be somebody taking, well, let's grab this as an example. This is a Vespa. It's obviously a near copy of a Microtech Combat Troodon. Okay, this is my first clone knife. And, they did take the design, obviously, from Microtech, but then they added, carbon fiber inlay in the blade and here, and this is S35 VN steel. This is actually a very good knife. It's been very reliable for the 2+ years I've had it. The quality is excellent. I've taken it apart. The machining inside, I've compared it to actual Microtechs. This is a properly CNC machined knife. I mean, it's an excellent knife. But they don't sell it as a Microtech. It doesn't come in a Microtech box. It comes in a Vespa box with all the Vespa labels. Comes with their branding. It comes with the little $30 tool that normally Microtech charges you. But then again, if you take apart the Microtech, you use the tool they sell you to take it apart, you avoid the warranty, which always seemed kind of odd. Theirs came with it. Theirs uses actually internally, their mechanism is a slightly improved design on the Microtech. So without taking this apart and getting too buried in the details, the clips that hang on either side of that slider, normally they just have like an L shape, so it just kind of lays over the edge, and sometimes when you put it back together, one of them will pop off. This uses dual springs, which it also came with spare springs. In case they ever stretch or break, you have spares. But their design isn't just shaped like an L. It actually they lay flat along the sliders, they go up, and then they go over. So they're captive. There's no way for those things to fly apart when you're reassembling it. So they actually took the Microtech design and improved on it. But they're selling it under their own label. They're obviously lifting the design for the most part and then tweaking it and actually making it better in some ways. So that's the difference. If something's a clone and they're ripping you off because they're saying, oh yeah, you're buying a Microtech, and you spend the money thinking you're getting a Microtech and it's in a Microtech box and Microtech labels, well, that's a clone, that's a counterfeit, and that's a problem, right? That's illegal. I look at kind of clones as, in a weird way, like a cover band. So what prompted me to have this particular video, and then we'll go through all this stuff, was watching Greg Medford from Medford Knife and Tool, who's a really cool dude. He's a military vet. I think he served in the Marines, and now he's kind of continuing to serve the country by coming out with some really cool hard-use knives for law enforcement and military and enthusiasts and things like that. So in a way, he's kind of still serving by making the tools for the people that do serve. And I like his politics. He's got a really dry sense of humor. He's a cool dude. He makes a really excellent product. But he goes on these rants and tirades about clones and things like that. And he talks about, well, that's my intellectual property, and I designed the knife and this and that. And then Chinese companies come in and steal it. And I get what he's saying. As a business owner, I totally get his points. But then I look at it and I say, okay, well, how would that argument be different than Bon Jovi or Aerosmith, sitting down and writing songs and getting the melodies right and doing the arrangements and putting it together, getting the band on board, practicing, getting in front of the engineers in the sound booth and recording and getting the record label to push it out and then going on concert to promote it. You think about all the hard work and everything that went into their intellectual property, and then a cover band comes along, whether it be AC/DC, and so there's a DC/AC cover band, there's Bon Jovi and Poison and Motley, there's cover bands for all the major bands. They take their intellectual property and perform it. Now, to put it back into this analogy, if I spent $400 on Aerosmith tickets and went to concert, and all of a sudden I'm like, that is not Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, that's a cover band, that would be counterfeits. I would have been duped. I would have paid the premium thinking I was getting the real product, and instead I'm getting the cover band. When I know that they're a cover band, Like, I don't begrudge somebody, even though technically they're lifting someone else's intellectual property. They're taking someone else's creativity and work, and they're not passing it off on their own. They're just reproducing that work. That's the difference between a clone and a counterfeit. Whether you're passing it off as your own or you're not, you're just taking the design and you're just basically doing an homage to it. It's heavily influenced by it. Some are actual copies of it, just like the songs with a cover band. But I don't see people getting so mad at the cover bands. Maybe some do, I don't know. But, when I look at a company like Medford or Chris Reeves, Sabenza, and we got clones of all of these things in here. We're going to talk about these in a moment. When you talk about microtech and stuff, the market's kind of broken into, I think, kind of two primary sets of buyers for the most part. There's some people that they just need a knife. They want a pocket knife. They just want it to do basic pocket knife stuff. They're not going into a war. It's just a cheap tool to them. And at the end of the day, a $500 knife isn't going to open an Amazon package, a whole lot better than a $50 knife will. And so that buyer would likely never spend $700 on a titanium Medford Praetorian. It just wouldn't. In fact, if you even said that, so we just spent $700 on a pocket knife, they would think that was absolutely insane that anybody would spend $700 on a pocket knife or more. Those folks buying clones aren't really hurting Microtech or Medford sales. Those people are never going to go and spend that kind of money on a knife. And so them buying a knife off of Amazon or eBay or something from a clone isn't really hurting sales. I do disagree with Greg on that. Those are not Medford customers, okay? Medford customers are going to be more enthusiasts, maybe military, law enforcement, collectors, people who, want to spend that kind of money on stuff, but no one's going to spend a month's rent on most people aren't going to spend a month's worth of rent or something, or a car payment, a nice car payment, mind you, on a pocket knife. They're just not. So just like some people, they'll go see the Elton John cover band at the local pub for $10. They're not going to spend $2,000 per ticket for Elton John's farewell tour. They're like, I like him, but I don't like him $2,000 per person much. You know what I mean? So you have to be realistic about that. So when people say clones are, they're stealing money from them out, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. For the collectors, but the collector's never going to buy the clone. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the market's set up. So let's just start popping some of these open and see what we got here. So again, cheap company, made in China. This one is the copy or clone of the Medford Infraction. So it's not titanium. This one is steel on this side, so it's a liner lock. G10 on that side. It is, I guess, a front flipper. D2, all of these are D2, at least they're labeled as D2. And from what I've seen in the reviews, they actually do test out as D2. So this is a copy or clone of the Medford Infraction. Now, I'll put prices and links to all these things on Amazon for anybody who wants to check them out. I think this knife was like less than $30. Most of these were. One was $59, the rest were like 30 or less. So this one, if you buy this from Medford, is $575. Now, as I go through this and we talk about these things, I am not in any way going to claim that these knives are the equals or even in the ballpark of the quality, fit and finish, well, maybe fit and finish, of the actual legit Medfords and Sabenzas and Microtechs and things like that. But I'm not going to sit here and say that these are not good knives. These things actually feel really nice. The lockup is good. Most of them have ball bearing pivots. The blade centering is dead on balls accurate, as Marissa Tomei would say from My Cousin Vinny. I mean, these are well executed knives. So where I got started in clones, and I'll tell you where I think clones are actually kind of a good thing, is that this is my first clone I mentioned. It was a Vespa. I wasn't sure I was going to like OTFs. And I didn't, I wasn't going to buy the cheap little, this is still a $140 knife. But I'd heard that they were nearly as good as the Microtechs on the materials, the fit and finish and all that. And I was like, well, if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy the cheap pot metal one, the Lightnings and crap like that, because that's not going to tell me what it's really like if it's a piece of crap. So I was like, okay, let me buy something like this. I'll risk $140 and, see if I like it. Because I wasn't going to try something for $500. Normally, a combat troodon from Microtech is $475 and up. depending on what blade and finish and stuff you want. I wasn't going to spend basically $500 to try something out and see if I liked it. I'm just not going to do that. So I bought this and I played with it for a couple weeks and carried it. And I was like, you know what? I actually do see the benefit of the OTF. I like the design. And so I started with the clone, bought from DHgate, which was clearly a copy, a cover band version of the Microtech, but not labeled as such. It's not counterfeit, but clearly lifted their design. What this did then was get me interested in this style. And at that point, I went, if I can see if I can remember these, I went and bought an actual Microtech Ultratech. Then I bought 4 more Ultratechs, all legit ones from Blade HQ and Knife Center. Then I bought 4 Heretics OTFs. Then I bought 2 Hogue OTFs from the local knife store shop. So again, legit. Then I bought 2 Guardian Tacticals from Blade HQ. I also bought a SOCOM Elite from Blade HQ. I then brought a Brian Ty and Friends OTF, which is a really nice $300+ OTF I bought at the Blade show in Atlanta. Then more recently, I bought a couple of the Axio Gear OTFs. I spent well over $3,500 on legit US-made OTF knives because I tried it out. I used the clone as a try before you buy. And that's why I've actually got a selection of these. What I've got here, this knife, let's just unpack them all. This is one that I've already reviewed. This is a Grow off of Amazon. It's their version of a SOCOM Elite. We'll go with it. We already got a review on that, so I'm not going to go too crazy talking about that. But the knives that you see here, these 5 that I'm going to pull out, these would have been $2,500. This one is another Grow off of Amazon. This is a copy of the Microtech DOC. I think it's Death on Contact. This was a collaboration they did with Mick Strider. This is actually excellent. We're going to go through all of these knives real quick in a minute. What I also like, and here just to put this in perspective when you talk about price, this knife comes with the tool to disassemble or tighten the screws. So for the proprietary screw heads, this tool that you would buy from Microtech is $30. The tool you would buy from Microtech cost more than this knife. Or this might have been the $59 one, I'm not sure. But just to put it in perspective, okay? Ball bearing pivots, really nice action. Liner lock, G10 with steel liners inside. We'll go through these in a moment. So I've got a copy of the DOC from Microtech. Let me put all these packages aside. Oops, as I smash into that. We've also got a Medford Praetorian. Beast of a knife. We've also got a copy of the Mick Strider SHM or SMF or something like that. And I'll say with this one, this is a very cool knife. Although that detent is so strong, I need to maybe put some oil on it, see if I can break that in or loosen that. I did notice on this one as well, everything about it is really quite nice. The detent is so strong, it's really hard to, I can't quite open it with the thumb. It actually pushes into my thumb. So, there are some downsides sometimes to the Chinese knives. Sometimes there is. And then the last one, we're going to keep going through what I think of these, but then we're also going to talk, just about clones in general. All right, got all that stuff. This is basically a Sabenza. It's G10 on one side. Well, actually, it's G10 on both. Liner lock, ball bearing pivot, really nice action. Just sweet knives. So let's go through them. The one that started me on this whole thing was I've been looking at the Praetorian for a while, and I've been thinking about it. But you want the Thai version? They're $700 and up, depending on what finishes and stuff you want. I didn't know if I was going to like it enough to because you look at the specs, you read about it, you see how thick the blade is, and you're like, is that going to be like too big for me to carry? So I want to see, do I even like the design? How do I like the ergonomics? Things like that. Because their cheapest version is $450. that has a D2 blade like this. It has a G10 scale like this. So there's a company on Amazon that sells these for less than $30. Now, is this as good as a Medford? Well, of course not. Is this good enough for most people? Yeah. Most people who just want a cool knife and are just going to open up boxes and they're going camping and, they're just going to use a knife as a knife. These are all well-made knives. Everything on the table here. This thing is awesome. The action is sweet. It's a really nice knife. The thing flies open. Lockup is good. It's a really nicely machined blade. It's wicked sharp. There's nothing wrong with these as knives other than the fact that they came from China. And to some people, that's, can't have anything from China. And that was another argument of Greg Medford that I kind of disagree with him on. I understand how he's trying to protect his business and stuff. Although, again, the people that buy this kind of knife from Amazon are not the kind of people typically that are going to buy his knives. Now, I like this, so I may go for Praetorian Slim. Now that I've seen how these fit in my hand and stuff like that, I'm like, you know what? It is big, but that is something I could actually carry and use. So I'm probably going to go and buy one of his knives now that I've tried it out here. This one I'm not that crazy about. It's okay, but I'm not a fan of front flippers. But it is nice. It is very EDC friendly. But I wouldn't spend $575 on one. For something small that's not as heavy duty, But something like that that's a tank and could last a lifetime. Well, I mean, they all could, but something like that that literally is like a tank. I could see that myself buying one of those. But, he goes on a rant about, if you buy knives from China, you're putting, money in the government of China, and that's funding terrorism. And then he goes on about how he says, if you're buying knives from China, you're literally funding Russia's attack on Ukraine, and you're directly responsible. And that's where Greg kind of loses me. I'm like, really, Greg? Because you probably got an iPhone in your pocket. I saw iPhones on the desks of some of your employees in some of your videos when they walk around, and I can hear the iPhone ringtone. Those came from China. There's nothing different about knives. If you're saying buying Chinese products, is funding the war in Ukraine, that doesn't limit itself to knives. Your employees that have iPhones, your Samsung TV that has parts inside it, even though it's a Korean company, has parts in it from China. Most things that most of us own, especially when it comes to electronics, maybe the chips in his CNC machines or parts in his CNC machines, a lot of that stuff comes from China. Parts in your US-made car come from China. So if you're going to make the argument that, buying a clone or buying a Chinese knife, they're all bastards and you're funding terrorism, well, that just doesn't really hold water. Your money is all going. You're buying stuff from China whether you like it or not. The reality is, China as a country, it doesn't. I mean, there's a reason why a company like you think about Anthony Marfione. That guy, very pro-American, has an American product, built his reputation on American-made knives and stuff. But at the end of the day, his new SOCOM Bravo, he had to go to Reich Knives in China to get it made so that he could sell it at a price point that most Americans would buy it at, because that knife is a freaking work of art. Most people are not going to spend $1,100 on a knife, though. They're just not. So he said, well, how can I make it more affordable? Well, the reality is it costs a lot more money to do business here in the U.S. U.S. labor costs a lot more. Doesn't give you necessarily a better product. Look at the automakers. Does Ford make a more reliable car, or does Chevy make a more reliable car, or Dodge make a more reliable car than Toyota? No. Do they even make a more reliable car these days than Kia or Hyundai? I would suggest probably not. So just being American-made, doesn't necessarily mean it's better. I understand the notion of supporting Americans and American jobs, and that's our economy. Those are all good things. But at the end of the day, if you price yourself out of the market because of U.S. labor costs and people don't buy your products, then are you really helping the U.S. economy? If you're selling knives at $1,100 and you're only appealing to those niche collector types, or you can offshore and have another country make the knives, as long as they make them to the right standards, as long as the quality controls and they're using the right materials and they're building them properly. And you know what? They are. This is a $30 knife. I don't know how they can make it for $30. Now, Greg will go on a rant about how, well, the Chinese government is, subsidizing and blah, 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 so that they can kill the new U.S. knife market and they kill every industry they go into. There may be some merits that, obviously China has its sights set on being, the dominating global, superpower and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Walmart, Microtech now, Apple, all the what you think of as like American companies, they're all using stuff from China. The U.S. consumer, I guess, can take the blame if you want. Everyone wants to say it's like, well, it's just corporate greed. Like that just explains everything. Well, there is and there isn't. Yes, a company can save money by offshoring to China, but that's not always a simple matter. Now you got all kinds of logistics and stuff, because import stuff, you got to worry about tariffs, and now your product can be held hostage by what's going on in another country, because things that happen there are going to cause, supply chain issues and all that kind of stuff. So, companies do take on risk by going and offshoring to a country, like China. However, the risk of doing the business here and then nobody buying your product, so sales are down, so then you lay people off, there's a balancing act. Americans don't want to spend $2,500 for an iPhone. I freak out enough with $1,100 for an iPhone that's manufactured in China. But if they brought that phone here to the States, you could easily double or triple the cost of products due to the labor costs. Labor is almost always the largest component, price-wise, in a product. Are most Americans gonna, you look at Apple and you look at how successful they are and the people that buy stock, and everyone thinks, oh, they're a good American company and they're socially conscious and all this stuff, whatever. But when you buy from their stuff, it comes from China, it's $1,100. What if that phone was made here in the States in U.S. made processors and assembled by U.S. labor, and everything was U.S. That iPhone could easily be $2,500 or $3,000. In which case, they ain't gonna sell. Who's gonna spend $3,000 on a friggin' phone that's disposable and you're gonna use for a year or two and then have to go buy another phone for $2,000 or $3,000? Sales would tank, the company would tank, all the people that they employ and all the people in the supply chain, the tech sector as a whole would have problems if we tried doing everything here. So it sounds good. It sounds pump yourself up, and I'm a patriot and this and that. And I'm not saying Greg isn't. I'm saying just in general, everything American, but there's a cost to doing business in America. And that may be that no one buys your damn products because it's too freaking expensive. And especially when oftentimes the quality isn't better. Now, Greg's product might be better, obviously, than this, and he charges a premium for it. Is this knife worth $700 to me? Even if it, the action's smoother and the tolerances are tighter and the steel holds up a little better, I'm willing to pay for stuff. Like I'm a bike snob, I tend to like Ducati and Aprilia and the expensive, brands and stuff. But, I'll buy Yamaha like I currently have and stuff like that. It really, it comes down to, are you a collector, or are you someone who just wants a decent knife? And I think clones are okay in that regard. I don't think it's stealing sales from Microtech for the reasons I stated before. But these are cool knives. The actions are nice. Now, this one, I will say, this one feels more like a $30 knife. Yeah, will it cut? Yeah. Is it beefy and brawny? Is it probably strong as hell? I mean, there's enough steel in there. It should be strong. Is it going to be as good as the Medford? No. But it's a cool knife. But these other guys, I mean, these are really nice knives. The actions are good. Other than this one, I got to oil the detent and see if I can loosen up that detent a little bit. Because like I said, it's kind of hard to just thumb stud and flick it. But all the other ones work just fine. This thing flies out. the Sebenza clone. But after playing with these, you know, I mentioned one of the goals of you know, me buying the clone. You know, like I said, when I started out, just these 5 right here, not including these ones up here, just these 5, this would be $2,500 if I bought the legit ones. Here I paid less than $150. So we're talking about quite a bit of savings. Now, for day-to-day use and just an EDC, these knives are all decent steel. They've got really nice sharp edges on them. I've already tested. They work real well. The blade centering's really good on everyone except for that big boy. They're very cool knives. Would I now go and buy any of them? I wouldn't buy the Sebenza. I know the Sebenza might be a little nicer in materials and stuff, but this is really well executed. The Sebenza clone. This is one made by Land. It's the model 910. Nice blade shape. I like the Sebenza design. It's a really cool design. It's using a Sandvik steel. Nothing to write home about. It's not the S35VN with, you know, the really nice heat treat that Sebenza does, or, you know, Chris Reeves does. But it's nice lockup, perfectly centered, nice G10, comfortable. The action's really sweet. Pocket clip looks good. It's it is reversible. I also like that it's got the pocket there, so you can recess that so it's not going to want to, you know, rotate on you. It's a cool knife. Would I, after seeing this design and playing with it, would I go and spend $475, which is where these start, for the actual Sebenza? No, I wouldn't. It's a cool knife, but it's not any cooler than the Kaisers or my Steel Wills or my the James brand Carter XL. It's not any nice, you know, it's not going to be, not saying that the Chris Reeve isn't a really nice knife, but just for the design and what it does and how it feels, it's not going to be any better for daily tasks than any of these other knives. It's not going to be any better for that stuff than it is here for $25 or whatever I paid for it off Amazon. So would I spend it on that? Does it interest me enough to justify that kind of money? Nah. This one, I like this in that, unlike most of the Medfords, this one is very pocket friendly. I like the design a bit. To me, the ergos are not that comfortable. Yeah, it's okay, but it is a really nice size. I do like the finger choil. I do like the fact that you can choke up on it safely. So, I mean, I might consider a knife like this, but then I look at this and go, okay, is this knife in and of itself cool enough to justify what they want for it? Medford wants $575 for that. Or I paid less than $30. It's got a nice grind. It's really nicely done. It's got ball bearing pivots, not washers. And I understand why he uses washers on a lot of his stuff. I've watched the videos. Again, I'm not knocking Medford. Medford makes a wicked product. He's a cool dude with a really cool product. But at the end of the day, to me, is this design made by Medford, if I were to get the real one, is it worth $575 plus taxes? Basically $600. No. It's a cool knife, and I'll sit here and play with the Amazon one. Yeah, still not a fan of front flippers. No, I wouldn't buy the real one. This one, the Microtech. I like the flipper. Works also really well with that. That's a nice big knife. I love that blade. I love the hollow grind. I love the swedge. I love the fact that that point is freaking sharp. The jimping is really nice. Again, finger choil, you can choke up. I would consider this one. Now, of course, I'm looking at this and going, okay, while I could justify, I think these go for around, if you can find them, $365, $380, but Blade HQ had them out of stock. Would I consider buying one, a real one? Maybe. Maybe. My problem with it is this one is so well made and executed, I have to ask myself the question, what would be better about the Microtech one? This one has stone-washed hardware. G10 scales with steel inserts, D2 steel, ball bearing pivot, liner lock, perfect centering. There's no wiggle, no wobble. Really nice. They bevel the edges here, so when your finger's on there, there's no sharp edges. They've actually gone to the trouble there to make sure that that's all beveled properly. They've made this knife, properly. It's a really good knife. So I like this enough that, I would consider, but not part of me is like, this one's so well executed. So did this cost them a sale? No, because I probably wouldn't have gone and just on a whim spent $360 on something like that. And I guess that's maybe where Greg kind of has a little bit of again, as a business owner, he's he has the right to gripe about clones at all, even if I don't necessarily agree with him. If I was a business owner, maybe I'd have the same stance as him. So I'm not going to begrudge him that. But I don't know. I look at these and I'm like, that's a really good knife. Same thing with this one. Now, I do like the Microtech SOCOM Elites. And when a SOCOM Bravo comes out, when I can find one in stock, I will get one of the Reich-made ones. I'll pay the $375 and I'll get that one, even though I've already got this one, because that one's got titanium and just all kinds of really cool stuff. But this knife is really well executed too. Ifengro is making really good knives. This is an Ifengro, this is an Ifengro, and this is an Ifengro. These ones are two companies. These two are from a company called Kanku or something like that. Again, dumb name. The only problem I have with this one, we'll jump to this one next, is that Strider knife. I love the blade, really thick stock, great jimping. Again, finger choil, very comfortable the way this sits in your hand, although the handle's a bit big and goofy. So I don't really like this design as much. I like the blade design. I don't like the handle. It's just too kind of massive. You've got a pocket clip here, but it's not deep carry. So look at how much of that knife is going to be sticking out of your pocket. So as an EDC, nah, not a fan of this one. And I was kind of on the fence to even order this one. But again, for the price, I was like, why not? So the only downside to that one, again, is that detent. I've got to find a way to loosen that detent up. And I know someone's going to say, well, if you bought the real one, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but the real one of these is $570. Or I could spend $30 and have just as good for my use, serviceable, just an EDC, around the house knife. And then the last one, the Praetorian. Out of all of these, which one am I most likely to buy as a result of having the clones? I would say it's going to be the Medford Praetorian. I'll probably go for the Scout just to keep the cost down. I don't mind G2. I know a lot of people say, oh, $450 for a D2 blade. I would submit that the way Greg does the D2 and the heat treat is going to be far superior to any of the way the Chinese mass-produced knives are going to do heat treat on D2. If Greg's putting his name on it and the warranty on it and stuff like that and using D2, I'm going to trust. I mean, from what I know of him in the company, I'm going to trust that I'm not going to be disappointed. So, but I wasn't going to just do it on a whim and hope that I liked it. And then if I didn't like it, well, now I got to go and try to sell it on the secondhand market, no. So I would say after playing with this, I'm probably going to order one of these. I think I'm going to spend the money and get that one. This one, I'm using it. Think of it like a dummy. It's letting me play with it. It's letting me see the size. It's going to let me put it in my pocket and feel the weight and go, yeah, it's definitely heavy, but it's not too heavy. It fits the hand pretty well. That's a good, really hard use knife. I could see myself having that. So did I save any money in the long run? Well, no, because I bought this and then I'm going to go buy the Medford. And these other ones are just cool knives. I'll throw them in the collection. I mean, look at that action. It's a really, really, and because it's bearings, there's no blade play. The lockup is really tight. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful knife. I don't know how they do it. This one, yeah. But anyway, that's kind of my little rant and rebuttal to some of the things about, you know, for me, I don't mind the clones for the same reason I don't mind a cover band. It is what it is. As long as they're not trying to sell it as the Microtech or as the Medford. They're not putting their name on it. Some of them are using different colors. Some of them are using different finishes. Some of them are adding different touches and inlays and things like that. They're changing the design a little bit, but they're selling it under their own label. This is the Bon Jovi tribute band. Pay 15, 20 bucks to go see him at the local pub and have a good time. But you know you're not going and seeing actually John Bon Jovi, or you're not going to see AC/DC or Aerosmith or Pink Floyd, right? If you want to spend the money and go see Pink Floyd, then go see Pink Floyd, you know? But when you take out of the equation the fact that they're clones and that you just look at them on their face value as a knife, this is excellent. That's excellent. This one is really freaking excellent. I mean, this is a really well done. This might be a $59 one. And it's amazing what you can get for $59. In a US made knife, if I were to buy this from Microtech, again, we're talking $365 or $400 or somewhere in that range. Really good knife. This one seems well made. I'm just not crazy about front flippers in that design, but it's decent. But this one feels more like a $50 knife. This one feels like a $30 knife. But it served its purpose. Let me try it, the Praetorian, to see if it would even fit my pocket and fit my hand before I go spend the money. And this one, if not for the detent, I would say this one would also be an excellent knife. Quality-wise, just again, not looking at it from the perspective of it being a clone. But man, that detent is strong. There's no way it's going to snap open, but in order for me to flick that, I got to fix that. But there you have it. I'll put links to these if you want to check them out. But for the most part, they're all excellent knives. Good if you don't get a crazy detent. And they're okay. They're not as good as the real deal. But it's at least let me play with them a little bit and see which designs I like to see if it's worth investing in any of the real deals. And in the end, it's going to be a yes for this one. And I'm going to get the Bravo, the SOCOM Bravo. So buying these will result in 2 sales of US-made premium knives. So there you go. That's my take on clones. Not counterfeits, but on clones. Anyway, hope you got something out of this. I know I rambled a bit. Probably took longer than I should have, but I just kind of was free-flowing it and seeing what I liked and what I didn't like. But I'll put links to each of these, and the model numbers and all that stuff. But you can find all these on, every one of these you can find on Amazon except for this one. This one you kind of have to go to DHgate or AliExpress. But all of these knives all came from Amazon, and they're all very reasonably priced. So if you're the kind of person that, you know, you like the design, but you don't want to spend $500 on something, the clones give you that option, you know? So there you have it. Have a good one. I've also got a review I'm going to do. I'll do it separately. It'll be independent of this one, of the Kaiser Towser K. That's a very cool knife. So stay tuned for that one.